In the summer of 1966, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was among the featured speakers at the annual Unitarian Universalist General Assembly. Just a year after the marches in Selma, Dr. King spoke before the thousands of Unitarian Universalists gathered that year in Hollywood, Florida, for this yearly convention. And here is some of what he said. I am sure that each of you has read that arresting little story by Washington Irving called Rip Van Winkle. One thing that we usually remember about the story of Rip Van Winkle is that he slept for 20 years. But there is another point in that story, which is almost always completely overlooked. It is the sign on the inn of the little town from which Rip went up into the mountains for his long sleep. When he went up, the sign had a picture of King George III of England. When he came down, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. When Rip Van Winkle looked up at the picture of George Washington, he was amazed. He was completely lost. He knew not who George Washington was. This incident reveals to us the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not merely that he slept for 20 years, but that he slept through a revolution. While he was peacefully snoring up in the mountains, a revolution was taking place in the world that would alter the face of human history. Yet Rip knew nothing about it. He was asleep. One of the great misfortunes of history is that all too many individuals and institutions find themselves in a great period of change and yet fail to achieve the new attitudes and outlooks that the new situation demands. There is nothing more tragic than to sleep through a revolution. We each must remain awake through the revolution of these times, and our churches must wake up too. It is not enough to work in the ideological realm. We must engage in the real work of social action. My friends, we must not sleep through this revolution. The words of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Call.
Every time.
Calls to action, like the one we just heard from Dr. King, can be intimidating and overwhelming if we feel we have to act on them by ourselves. Our All Peoples community is here not only to inspire us to live by our values, but to organize us, energize us, and allow us to act for justice as a larger group. There is truly strength and power in numbers. Here at All Peoples, everything we do is made possible by the participation and generosity of all of you. Our financial contributions, large and small, add up to an abundance which keeps us growing. As we collect our offering today, please give with joy in your heart. You can donate by cash or check as we pass the plates, by scanning the code displayed, which will take you to our website, or by texting an amount to the number on the screen. Thank you for your generosity.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm going to wait just a second while we transfer the mic. Perfect. Thank you. Isn't it wonderful to have our All Peoples Choir back in the congregation? And this is just a friendly reminder that if you too want to join the All Peoples Choir, we meet on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. and there are always spaces for you to come and join us. Today's anthem we have is called Arise and Greet the Day by Victor Johnson. I want to read one of the lines that we'll be singing. which is the bright star of hope gently guides us on our journey as courage illuminates our path. We boldly seize each new opportunity and set new goals that we'll achieve. So as we are reminded to figure out what we want to do and how we want to impact the world, let these words resonate in your heart and the sound of our choir resonate in your soul.
Wow, thank you. You know, in about 32,000 BCE, the Sumerians developed the first written language. Around the year 1400, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press. By the 1800s, Samuel Morse had developed the telegraph. And in 1969, a group of computer scientists successfully created the very first internet connection. None of them could have probably imagined that by the 21st century, our society would have evolved to a place where many of us seem to communicate primarily through memes. Yes, memes, M-E-M-E-S, those creative, often funny, and occasionally informative graphic images that are now everywhere on our social media feeds and our smartphone screens. For better or worse, these little pictures are rapidly becoming a primary source of information and entertainment for younger generations among us. One popular meme that I keep seeing over and over again these days is this image. It is a quote from the recently anointed leader of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, a longer version of this quote from Pope Leo that I have seen reads as follows: "To serve the forgotten, to uplift the broken, to speak plainly where others stay silent, to be called woke in a world that sleeps through suffering is no insult, it is the gospel." Woke means awakened by compassion, guided by truth, humbled by grace, committed to justice, not just for some, but for all. So let them mock, let them sneer. We will still build the kingdom, not with walls, but with love. Be awake, be loving, be woke. Now, I saw this and I thought, you go, Pope Leo, good for you, right? I mean, while the Catholic Church certainly has its own issues and has been a source of both amazing good and horrific abuse, it is incredibly gratifying to see their new leader speaking out for what is right. The Holy Father himself offering a clear rebuke and a challenge to the attitudes and the actions of our current American leaders who seek to punish poor people, terrorize refugees and immigrants, and vilify voices of diversity and inclusion. I don't know about you, but amidst all of the disturbing things that are happening, it can feel like sometimes the only response from our elected and even religious leaders to all of it is silence. That's why seeing a meme like that one from the Pope and others that are circulating across the internet from folks like California Governor Gavin Newsom, why seeing that stuff is so satisfying. It offers us a little hope and encouragement amidst a lot of darkness. But here's the thing. When it comes to that particular meme of the Pope saying, be awake, be loving, be woke, well, you know, there is no evidence that he actually ever said those words at all. Now, I'd like to think that Pope Leo believes that. He has never stated it publicly. That meme with that quote is fake news. It just goes to show that when it comes to embracing false information, we are all a little guilty and maybe a little gullible sometimes. But this makes me wonder, if Pope Leo never actually said that, does it make those words less true? Does it matter the source? Does it matter that some anonymous liberal blogger wrote it instead of a religious leader? Don't we still need to try to be woke in a world that sleeps through too much suffering? You know, the origins of the term woke go back to the early 1900s in Black communities. It was a way of referring to the need to be aware, to be attentive to the dynamics of racial identity and racism in society all around us. In 1923, Jamaican nationalist leader Marcus Garvey urged Black people to wake up as a call to action. And stay woke, friends, became a street slang term in places like Houston, Texas, and Los Angeles, a term for being alert to the real threats of racism. Blues musician Leadbelly used the phrase in a famous song back in 1938. It was a song about a group of Black teenagers falsely accused of a crime. Of course, it was not until the Black Lives Matter movement, protests, and actions of more recent years that that term, being woke, entered the mainstream of American consciousness in a big way. During the months following the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, that term was shouted in the streets and from the rooftops by Black people demanding an end to violence against their families and against their children. Being woke became a sign of solidarity, a refusal to accept the unacceptable anymore. But then, somewhere over the past few years, things changed. What had been a term invented and used by Black folks, used to empower protest and progress, was suddenly claimed by somebody else, suddenly turned on its head and redefined as an insult by those hell-bent on preserving white supremacist culture. These days in our political discourse, we hear woke quite often used as a slur to deride, to denigrate efforts to support diversity, equity, and inclusion, used to characterize them as extreme, as harmful, as even discriminatory in their own right. Taking this idea of being woke and giving it a negative and threatening connotation is something that I think we have to resist with all our hearts. We have to refuse to take part in doing that. Appropriating this term in this way is part of a much larger social narrative going on. I read a commentary recently that has really stuck with me. And at least in my own processing, it has helped me understand what is going on in our nation these days a little bit. One social analyst concluded this. She said, back in 2008, the leaders of one of our political parties were so alarmed by the election of Barack Obama that they agreed that they would do whatever it takes to make sure that such a thing could not happen again. These leaders concluded that if our democratic process might result in a black-skinned man being our president, then it would be better to forgo the Constitution and embrace authoritarian rule than to run the risk of losing their monopoly on power. Now, this explains a lot if you think about it. The extreme gerrymandering, the voter suppression efforts, the outright silence of folks like Mitch McConnell about the attempted violent insurrection at our Capitol back in January of 2021. It is why there's no pushback, nothing at all from our Congress, as one man overrides many of their decisions and deploys the military onto the streets of American cities. While I think our leaders may not consciously admit this, it seems to ring true in a lot of their actions. And I think that being woke means uncovering these types of motivations and identifying them in the larger frame of history. You know, in many other nations, race-based slavery was ended by legislation, by acts of a parliament. While in our country, it took fighting the bloodiest war in our history. And that conflict did not result in the dismantling of racism. It only led to the establishment of systems of segregation. Systems of segregation which remain unchallenged for almost a century. It is only in the past 50 years or so that we have gradually seen black folks and lots of other folks being empowered to finally claim their rightful place at the table in our society. It is only in living memory that widespread efforts to undo those legacies of the past have begun to be implemented. What I am saying is not some biased, not some crazy liberal or overly dramatic retelling of history. It is the truth about where we have all come from. And being woke is embracing that real history. And right now, while the University of Louisville and the University of Kentucky and so many other institutions and corporations are caving in to political pressure and eliminating the programs that teach that history and seek to address it. Right now is the time that we don't need to just be woke. We need to stay woke. And staying woke to me is about more than just seeing all this as simply some partisan political debate, or seeing it as a list of issues to be addressed by somebody else. Staying woke is about not only seeing this, but feeling it. Feeling the deep harm that is being done to real people, many of whom are my neighbors, some of whom are my family members. Staying woke is coming to terms with the reality that is playing out in our nation today. It's a reality that for many Americans, it was okay with them to end blatantly discriminatory laws. It was okay to see a few non-white faces on the TV every now and then. But, for many at least, having black and brown folks and LGBTQ folks and maybe even women claiming their full and unquestioned equality and having their voices centered, amplified rather than marginalized was, well, that was a step just too far. And they support efforts to push that back. Staying woke involves recognizing that such unease with racial identity politics and racial identity itself is a major part of what is fueling the flames of division right now. And that fire burns not only in others, not only with those other people of that other party, it burns inside me too, inside all of us here. How can I act? How can I be in ways which insist that diversity, equity, and inclusion are not just buzzwords or abstract ideas that I say I support? How can I act? How can I be that makes those into values, into ways of living, ways that places that I shop at, institutions I serve are not free to abandon if it's convenient? Being woke is that little voice that tells me I must do whatever I can to resist, to overcome the forces that are determined to maintain white-centered culture at any cost. You know, often we do not think about the rise of authoritarianism and oppression that we're seeing. We don't often think of it through the lens of racial history and identity. But it is a huge part of our national narrative. It is a huge part of what's happening, whether we name it or not. Now, as we heard in our story earlier about Mr. Rip Van Winkle, all of this staying woke stuff, well, it can be more than just a little bit exhausting. Reading the news headlines each day is overwhelming. Hearing the latest hateful rants coming out of our White House is just disheartening. And on top of that, we each have our own lives to navigate as well. Illness, job and financial stresses, family responsibilities, kids to raise and parents to take care of. Every day we each have our own life to live as well, in the midst of all of this mayhem. Without a doubt, we need time to rest. We need time to take a break. We need time to celebrate all that is still good and to do what we need to take care of ourselves. It is so tempting to just turn off that TV, right? Every time that terrible man starts to open his mouth. To stop listening to the hard realities about deportations and wars and genocide and anti-vaccine mandates. Yet the more that we shut down and shut out the realities around us, the more we become numb to them. And that numbness can lead us to also shut out all those amazing and wonderful parts of life as well. Because one never comes without the other. I will tell you that since I moved to Louisville 4 years ago, my husband and I have made it our quest to get out there and to enjoy and experience as many of the great things about this city as we can. In just the last week or so, we have taken our dogs for a long walk in the Jefferson Memorial Forest. We attended the World Fest down on the river, enjoyed some good beer at Oktoberfest at the German American Club, and took part in the annual Louisville Pride Festival, where I got to do glitter blessings. Awesome. But you know, of everything that I have experienced around here over the past few years, I got to tell you, the most beautiful sight of them all, the most inspiring thing that I have witnessed, came when I was standing in the middle of Jefferson Street downtown with thousands of other Louisville people at the No Kings rally back in the spring. Folks were there from so many different backgrounds, folks from every neighborhood, every part of town, old and young, cheerful and angry, all there, thousands of us, to speak out for each other. It was a mass outpouring of all that is good in our humanity, right here in Kentucky's largest city. And you know, if I had decided to check out that day, to not pay attention to what was going on, I would have missed it. I think that staying woke is ultimately about rejecting the numbness and the cynicism that seeks to lull us into inaction, and instead doing our best to remain open to what is really happening, noticing and taking in everything, all of it, both the really hard truths and the possibilities that they offer to us. And you know, thank goodness none of us here has to stay woke all by ourselves. We have this beloved church community to encourage us, to inspire us, to bring us together, to keep getting out there, to keep doing our part in helping to heal this world. I want to close this morning with another meme. This is a message that we posted on our All People social media sometime earlier this month. Now, I don't know who wrote it, but I'm pretty sure it was not the Pope. And these are just words, right? But I think they are words that are a pretty good affirmation for each of us as we get to the work ahead. If being woke means believing that every person, no matter their color, gender, faith background, who they love, or where they come from, deserves equal and fair treatment in this country, then I'm not just woke. I am wide awake.